It's a joy, and it's the day the Lord has made. Because He's made it, what do? We rejoice. We're glad in it. If you agree with me, can I get an amen? Amen. You got your Bibles this morning. Can you meet me at Psalm 23? Turn me up on the lapel. Oh, that's somebody's phone. That's your glasses, okay. They're not responsible for the Psalm 23, when you're there, say I'm there. Yeah. Looking, say still looking. All right, I'll give you a second. When you're there, you can indicate that you're there by standing. Most of you are already on your feet as we stand in honor of the word of the Lord. I'm reading from the Christian Standard Bible. Let me warn you, for you folk who know this by heart, from King James. I'm reading this from the Christian Standard Bible, so if I get it different from yours, I don't need you walking out on it. The Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for His name's sake. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear some evil. I want to see if you were paying attention. I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
Yes.
You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely, goodness and faithful love will follow me or pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord as long as I live. I want to speak to you for the rest of this morning, a little bit of the early afternoon, on the topic, His care and our trust. His care and our trust. You may be seated as we go to the throne of grace. God in heaven, thank you so much for this moment that we have to pause, to dive into your word. Your word is true. This psalm, God, has been used to comfort us, yet it still calls us. So, God, we pray that in this time that we have to dive into your holy word, we pray that you would speak. You've spoken already, but we pray that you would speak from what you've said. That you would give us ears to hear you and hearts to embrace your truth and feet specifically to run after in obedience. Let us not be mere fatheads who know a lot. Let us be people who have feet swift to move in obedience. Now, God, I pray for me as I have done my best this week to get up under this very familiar passage, to be able to pull out what it is you're saying to us today. I pray, God, that you would give me strength, give me power to take your word to your people, give me clarity of thought, give me boldness. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart, let them be acceptable in your sight, oh God, our strength and our Redeemer. It's in Jesus' matchless name we pray. Amen. Amen. This psalm is one of the most recognizable passages in the Bible. And I can tell some of you, even as I read it, you didn't really have to turn your Bible there because many of you, you know this passage from memory. King James, of course, it's the reason why some of you had to resist the urge from walking out, because you felt I was tearing up your understanding of Psalm 23. It's one of the most recognizable passages. People who don't even go to church almost can quote this one from memory. Charles Spurgeon called it the Peril of Psalms, placing premium on this psalm because people love this psalm. In our culture, this psalm is very popular. People like Kanye West, Notorious Big, and Pink Floyd have used pieces of this psalm in their own music. This psalm has become tattoos on people's arms. In the movie Titanic, it was recited as the ship was going down. George W. Bush, he read it as he addressed the nation in the wake of the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Many of you have heard it read at funerals. Some of you have heard me read it as I lead the procession down this middle aisle to eulogize a loved one. You've heard this song. This song is a familiar song. It is a song that comforts us and touches us deeply. We don't just love it for its beautiful lyricism, but we love it because it tells us something about God. We love it because it tells us that God cares for us. And in a world where it seems like so much can go wrong at any given tweet, we sometimes have to be reminded that God absolutely cares for us. Let me say it deeply. God doesn't just care for you, God deeply cares for you. God cares about the monstrosity and the mundane. God cares about the little of your life and the big things of your life. God cares about the obstacles and the mountains that you think you cannot traverse or cross. But God cares about the small details of your life. If your hairs on your head could be numbered, or the very ones that you've lost can be found by God. Certainly the details of your life are something that God cares about. And this psalm, in very tough times, very difficult times, reaches to our core because it says to us in a very loud, resounding noise, God cares for me. Yes. But up underneath that care, there is something deeper. We often get the care and the goosebumps and the feelings that this song gives us, but we sometimes can miss the call it has on our lives. That is to say that on the face value of this psalm, yes, God cares for you, but his care calls something from you. This psalm is scripted to say to us that God's meticulous care should demand our lasting trust.
Yes, Lord.
That God's care for us is not just something we hear about and know about, but God's care is to elicit in us a response that makes us say, God, I will trust you because you have proven yourself trustworthy in the depths of your care that you have for us. Well, I hear you asking the question. I hear it loudly. Pastor, you talk about trust and dependence on God all the time, but what does it look like to trust in God? This particular psalm that David scripts out, and he is one to write this because his whole life had to be spent as one to trust God. Now, trusting God does not mean perfection, because you know from the story of David that he was far from perfect. This was the same man who murdered a woman's husband just to be able to sleep with her. Yet God takes his imperfect trust and does something with it and proves himself faithful. David in this psalm, Psalm 23, shows us three things that we do that shows, that helps us to place our dependence, our weight, our trust in God. And I'll rush to it. The first is this. Trust God to meet every one of your needs. Now, sometimes we can relegate God to the one who helps me in my tough times, God. He is the one that we call when we stand at the foot of a street and we don't know which way to go. He is the one we call when we stand at a brick wall and we cannot get through. That's the God we call. But God is a God who doesn't just care for your big needs, he cares also for your small needs. God cares about you and I, and he seeks to meet the varied and multifaceted needs of his people. It's in the text. Verse 1, David says it. The Lord is my shepherd. And I'll quote it for you in your language so You don't get mad at me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You get what it means here. David is pulling into us this metaphor of a shepherd leading his sheep. Sheep are dumb animals, so it's the job of a shepherd to take care of the sheep. It is not just the job of the shepherd to protect the sheep, but the shepherd also makes sure that the sheep has all that it needs. And David says it, just like the sheep, I am the sheep of the shepherd. I have been brought near to God, and you and I have been brought near to God in Christ Jesus, and because of that, God is your shepherd, and there are no needs that you have that God is not able and willing even to meet. He is our shepherd. We shall not want. When we have needs, God sometimes waits for you to ask Him to meet it. And in this text here, David shows us some needs that God meets. When we need rest, He gives it to us. The psalmist says, He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. I had the wonderful time about a month ago to travel up to northern Michigan with my family, and we got an Airbnb. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's when you go online and you rent a house for cheaper than a hotel. And this Airbnb was situated near a stream, and that water rushed pretty quickly, but there was something about it that after a long day with my kids, and anybody who's ever traveled with kids, you know, vacation with your kids ain't no vacation. It's work. It's stressful and headache-inducing and fun. At the end of every day, I found myself in a chair sitting by the water. I couldn't swim in it. But there was something about the rushing water, the white noise that it provided for my ears that was able to take my troubled mind and to give it a respite for a second. Here's what the psalmist is saying. When you and I come to a place where we've come to the end of ourselves, when we come to a point where we ain't got no more energy, when we are emotionally tired, when we are psychologically drained, when we are physically tired, you have a God who can give you rest. Let me make it plain for us. Some of us are so used to fighting it out and struggling and toiling and working, and we come to the place where we believe that we are measured by what we produce. And that ain't nothing God says. But rather, God is the one who says, those of you who are tired and weary and heavy laden, come to me and I will give you rest. Why? Because I give my beloved rest. There are some of us who are tired in our souls. We've come to the end of our work time and we found ourselves in retirement, and we work harder than we did when we punched the clock. And there are some of us who have tried hard to hold the facade and tried hard to hold ourselves together, and God says, you ain't got it, I got what you need to give you rest. You have a God who stands there willing and ready every moment to give you the rest your soul needs. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've been running a long time. Maybe you've been running from God and you found yourself at a place where you're tired, and God is saying, don't run no further. I'm the God who gives you rest. See, because God cares meticulously about you, He cares about the needs you have, such as rest. Oh, but it goes further. When you need to be restored, He can give you that too. Here's the psalmist. He restores my soul. This soul language ain't salvation language. This isn't some disembodied spirit figure that floats away in the air. The word used here in the Hebrew gives a deeper idea. When the psalmist says He restores my soul, he ain't talking about your spirit. He says He restores your life. Hear it now. This means every part of who you are, when it's broken, God can fix it. Has your heart been broken by somebody? Has your soul been stepped on and left in fragments and pieces? Well, God is the God who says, bring me your broken pieces. And if you need to be restored, I can fix it. But let me be real with us. Some of us are so used to functioning in dysfunction where we would rather live in dysfunction and in the comfort of dysfunction than we would in healing that God provides. So we walk around and we're reckless to people. We cut folks off quicker than we can say hello. We run from folks. We go from mess to old mess, from old mess to new mess, because we're so used to living in the lives of our broken selves. And God is saying, I am the one who is able to take your broken heart and to take your broken soul, and you messed up your life, and can take up them pieces and fix it. I'm the God who gives you what you need because I care about your life. I give you rest. I restore your broken places. Has your soul been hurt by a family member? Has your heart been betrayed by a loved one? Has life stepped on you and treated you like scum? Have you been left trying to pick up the shambles that is your life? And God says, you can't pick up these broken pieces. Just like I give you rest, I give you restoration. Trust Him in that. But it goes deeper, beloved. Not only does He give you restoration when you need it, when you need guidance, He can give you that too. Here's what the psalmist says. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Righteousness here don't mean right living. It means He sends you down the right paths. My translation's right. That God knows the right roads and the wrong roads. That God is able to take you and to send you down the right road. See, you got to understand the metaphor here, because the sheep would gather and they would sit with their heads down in the ground. You know, sheep are dumb. And they would just eat the field in front of them. They would eat the grass that sits before them. And because they know no better, they will eat the grass to the point that it's gone. They will circle around in space hoping to find more grass. But the shepherd knows something that they don't know. And while they're so busy digging in the dirt, the shepherd is able to lead them to better and greener pastures versus keeping them there. Some of us, like those sheep, circle around life and we just as lost as the next one. Either we're too foolish to admit that we're lost, or we're too blind to see that we lost. So we'd rather stay stuck in past stuff, rather deal with unrelated things, rather stay stuck in what was, rather go back to who was, rather stay where we were. And God says, when you are lost in your path, I give you direction on the right path. God is greater than any GPS system. He gives directions and He leads you when you're lost, but you simply got to admit it. Here's what the psalmist is saying. No matter what you need, God is able to meet your needs better than a one-stop shop. Whenever I fly to school in Indianapolis, me and my classmates have a ritual that we do every time we get there. Don't look at me crazy. I wasn't about to talk about no weird stuff. But whenever we get to Indianapolis, we all pile into about 2 or 3 cars, and we make our way to the local super Walmart. Oh, don't look down on me. You know about that Walmart life. When you ain't trying to be fancy and you don't want to go to Target, you go to Walmart. There's something about Walmart. Walmart, when you're hungry, there is a market to get food. When you need to get your medicine refilled, there's a pharmacist right there. When your feet hurt, Dr. Scholl's is right there. You need fertilizer to kill the weeds in your lawn care, right there. When you need some new shoes, Shoe Spot, right there. When you need some toilet paper right there. You see, Walmart was designed with you in mind. They didn't want you to come in the store and feel like you had to go to 6 or 7 different places to get what you need. But they wanted you, when you walked in that front door, to say you have come to the right place. Because anything that you may need can be found behind these doors. Beloved, let me talk to you. Jesus is greater than Walmart. That everything that you need can be met and found in Jesus. Instead of running here and running there and running everywhere. Instead of calling folks that you should have let go a long time ago. Instead of going places that you should have stopped going a long time ago. God stands there, willing and ready to give you what you need as a one-stop shop. You need joy this morning? God's got it. You need peace this morning? God's got it. You need to know where your next dollar is coming from? God's got it. You need a friend? God's got it. You need time? God's got it. God can give you what you need when you trust Him for everything that you need. It's because He cares about the details of your life. Why would He not meet your needs if He cared? The very fact that He cares says He meets your needs, but don't sit blindly on that. Trust Him. Put your weight and your confidence in Him. You already know what that means. You walked in these chairs and ain't nobody testing to sit down in them. You just drop all your weight in it. That's what God is saying to you this morning. Lean back on me and trust that I will meet your needs. Not only do you trust Him that He'll meet all your needs, but trust in God's presence when you face peril. Here's what He says. The reality is this. Life, as many of us know it, and many of us have seen, will present peril. That's a word for somebody. Because many of us believe that because we know Jesus, peril ain't ever coming. You ain't in heaven yet. You are not home yet. You are still on the journey. And as long as you keep living, every day ain't going to be blue. Some days we'll have clouds and some days we'll have storms. Peril will come. The psalmist says, when these moments come, yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I fear no evil. See, you can read this and think that the sheep or David himself wandered into this valley. But if you follow verse 3, He leads me along right paths, right after it, even when I go into the dark valley. See, the dark valley is where the runs over. Joy is anchored in something more eternal than your temporal situation. Joy says that I am a child of God. Hate me if you want to, but because of Jesus, I have been brought near by His blood, and no matter what you do, you cannot demote me or take me down because I am a child. That's joy. Not only does it refresh you and overflow, but even greater, the bigger point he makes is that grace chases you. See, we often hear this notion about somebody falling from grace. And we tend to think that we can fall from God's graces. It ain't in the Bible. There's some stuff some people made up. Because you cannot fall from God's graces. Because again, by definition, you don't deserve grace. So if God would give you something, not just a present, but would lavish it on you, and it has nothing to do with you, then how do you lose something that got nothing to do with you? You can fall from my graces. And watch this, I can fall from your graces. But the grace of God never abandons you. Here's what the psalmist says. He says, only goodness and faithful love follows me. I'll get your translation. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. The word used for mercy is not mercy like you don't get what you deserve mercy. The word used for mercy, and I hate to do this, but you need to learn this, you need to write it down, comes from a great word that is used in Old Testament theology, chesed. The word chesed means something deeper than mercy. It means even something deeper than love. The word hesed is so heavy that you got to put about 7 to 10 words on it for you to understand the depths of it and how much of it God got for you. The idea of hesed means his unfailing love, his faithful love, meaning his love that don't leave you because you left it, meaning his love that don't fade because you have faded. But it's a love that stays strong from the moment it touched you to the moment you're in his presence at death. It is a love that lasts forever. He says, surely this love will follow me. But you know what comes paired with it? Goodness. Goodness are the benefits of that grace. It is with that grace comes wonderful things that God has for you. It means that with that grace, God has joy for you. It means with that grace, God has peace for you. It means with that grace, God has answered prayers for you. With that grace, God has company when you're lonely. It is the goodnesses that follow you. But the notion of it following you sounds like it is something you have tied to the back of your belt. I submit that's not what David means here. But it's really the picture of a lion chasing prey. And no matter how fast the prey goes, the lion catches it. That's what grace is for you. And no matter how far you go, no matter how fast you run, God's grace pursues you even faster. And I remember as a kid, I was chubby. That's no surprise to you, I'm chubby now. And most of you are going to relate to this. When you tall, slender folk who ain't never had an ounce of fat, I got nothing to say to you right now. Thank you. But those of us who got a little bit of chunks, we know this struggle, and you're going to know it. Everybody in the neighborhood in the summer always wanted to play it. For those of us who did not have length, who were not skinny, could not run. And on my block, right next to me, just north of where I lived, there was a family and there was a young lady who lived in that house. And she couldn't just dust me, she could dust the whole neighborhood. But it was even worse when she dusted me. I was older than she was. How could she dust me? And you know how it was played. You always had somebody stand there, and I always knew it was going to eventually be me. And they would count out their Mississippis. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. And they'd peek out the side to see who was there. 3 Mississippi. By the time they were at 7 Mississippi, I would make my way halfway down the block and be dodged under a car. Oh, they're never going to find me. When she would hit 20 Mississippi, everybody way down on 85th Street was down at South Chicago at that point. And I would see her coming, and I would gun it. I would put my legs up, and I'm ready to go. And I'm telling you, I'm Prefontaine in here. I'm going super fast. I'm kicking up dust behind me. I'm Usain Bolt. I'm gone. And you ain't going to catch me. And then I would hear feet coming up behind me. I'm running as fast as I can, sweat falling all off my shirt, and those feet would get closer, and then she would tap me, tap your it. Can I tell you something in a greater way? That is God's grace for you. And even when you think you ran as far as you could go, even when you think you've slid as far as you can slide, even when you think you've made a big enough blunder, even when you feel like you've made a mess of yourself, no matter how far you run or where you go, God's grace comes chasing right after you. And with His grace comes much blessing, and it comes even no matter how fast you think you can go. Bam, just when you thought you were on your last dollar, bam, grace shows up with many goodnesses and gives you $20 extra. Just when you thought you were slipping to your low, bam, God shows up and He answers you and He lifts you up. Just when you were thinking you needed God to move, grace caught up, bam, and it caught up and it met you where you were. Grace chooses to follow you. Oh, I see some of you believe me, and there are some skeptics in the room. I see you. Preacher, I have poor fortune. Nothing ever goes my way. Perhaps you need to look at your life differently. Maybe you need to see the very details of your life and to see how God has met the details of your life with grace. When you were inebriated, You got home safely some kind of way. Yes, you did. Although you should not have been with that person, God kept you when you should have been messed up by that person. Even when you thought you shouldn't have been where you knew you shouldn't have been, that bullet did not hit you. That's called grace. God's grace chases after you. It's a passive thing. You receive the grace of God. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. But there is an active pursuit of this grace. There is a part of me that says, yes, it comes, but I won't wait. There is a part that says, it's coming, but I'm going to run after it. Preacher, prove it. Right after he says this piece, he says, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. He ain't talking literally, because he got to live his life. But what he's saying is this: I ain't got to wait for grace to come after me. I'm going to stay wherever grace is. It means I ain't got to wait for God to do it. I'm going to keep on going until he does it. It's the passive receiving of grace, but the active running after God for it. There are many of us in the room who God has grace and goodness waiting to touch you, but you are foolish enough to say, I ain't going to ask for it. There are some of us whose minds are anxious. Have you asked God to give you peace of your mind? There are some of us who are grieving. Have you asked God to be a comfort for you? There are some of us who are lost and don't know which direction to make. Can you say, God, give me the goodness that comes along with grace to show me what I need? Here's what the psalmist is saying: trust in God's everlasting grace. Why? Because God cares for you. He don't just love you, he likes you. And he likes every detail of you. And he cares about every part of you. He is a meticulous, caring God who dotes over every aspect of your life. He cares for you. He cares thoroughly for you. And I see some of you doubt it. He cares so much for you that he sent his Jesus for you. That even while we were dead in our sins, sinking to a very deep low, God took his son and threw him in flesh clothes. And Jesus took your mess and my mess, and he hung on the cross in our place, and he did die. And God raised him from the dead. Why? Because God cares for you. But don't sit on it. Don't just say God cares for me, and it's some fact that stays in your head. The care of God is intended to make you say, since you care, God, I'll trust you, God. Because it says if you care that much, you ain't going to drop me, God. It says if you care that much, you can keep me, God. It says if you care that much, you can hold me together, God. If you care that much, you can meet all my needs according to your riches in glory. If you care that much, God, you can order my steps because I'm the righteous one. If you care that much, God, certainly I will trust in you. I wish I had about 6 people in the room who can testify about how sweet it is to trust in the Lord Jesus. That when you trust in God, you have seen that God is good. You have tasted with your own mouth and seen that God is good. That when you have thrown your weight back in Jesus, when you have come to the end of yourself, that when you lay back on the arms of our Master, God has been able to prove himself faithful to you. It is so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promises, just to know thus saith the Lord. When you're trusting in Jesus, you're leaning on his word, and you're hearing that his word says, I'll supply all your needs, not some. I'll supply all your needs, not the big ones. I'll supply all your needs, not just the small ones, according to my riches and glory. Leaning on his word, meadows and the green pastures were. And whenever the sun would shine, those valley walls could cast shadows across the other side of the valley. But you know, not only the sheep were in the valley, but predators sat in the dark waiting for the sheep. But the sheep didn't wander there. The shepherd led them there. Let's talk real. What do you do when God leads you towards peril? What do you do when trouble is the right path that God leads you on? Oh, I see some of you looking at me like I'm crazy. You woke up and did not expect to get that doctor's notice, but God led you there. You went to your job and you thought all was good until you got that pink slip, but God led you there. What happens when God leads you to peril? Oh, see, you think I'm spitting heresy. Let me give you Bible here. Even when God was freeing his people, Israel, from Egypt, they didn't just go from Egypt to the promised land. They had to go from Egypt to peril to the promised land. Why? Because in the places of peril, God teaches you things about him. If you never ever came to a place where you actually felt danger, if you never came to a place where you felt insecure, you would never know that God was a strong power and that he was able to keep you. But here's what he says. He says, even when I find myself in these places, you corrected me in my poor reading. He says, I fear no evil. Why? Because your rod and staff comfort me. See, the rod and staff of the shepherd's only able to comfort because the shepherd is standing near. The sheep ain't got to scatter when they hear the sound of a predator coming, because they know that the one who holds the stick got more power than the predator. Here it is. When you find yourself in places of peril, you ain't got to trip out, because it is God who is still there with you. Even in the peril, his presence is still real. It's like when James went swimming. His instructor jumped down in the water before him and said, get in the pool, James. And you know these instructors, they don't ever leave you in the place of comfort. They always pushing you past where you want to be. And this instructor says, James, we've spent a few weeks and I've taught you a little bit about floating. I even taught you a little bit how to swim. But now I'm going to mess your world up. It's time you learn to do it on your back. James almost got out the water. His instructor reached over and grabbed his hand and said, let me show you. Grab the side of the rail, James, and put your feet against the wall. After about trying 3 times to get his feet on the wall, finally James gets his feet on the wall and the instructor says, now push back. James pushes back and releases himself from the wall, and just as he is floating away, the water begins to go into his ears. And as the water goes into his ears, he's taken over by a thought. I'm floating on top of water and my feet ain't on the ground. He began to feel fear that took over his whole body, and he began to sink. And as he began to flap for air and he started to scream, the instructor did not panic. But instead he held his arms out under James's back and says, I'm here for you. Beloved, can I say something to you? That when God leads you to a place of peril, when you come to a place that seems absolutely unfair, when you come to a spot that is uncertain and insecure, God does not vacate and leave you alone, but his presence is there with you. And he stands there and he holds you up by his hands and he says, I won't drop. Now let me just say this. You ain't holding your mind on some abstract idea, but you are holding your heart on a promise that he made, that I will never leave you, nor will I ever forsake you. I am with you always, even until the end of the ages. Instead of finding yourself in fear, why don't you give yourself to faith? Trust in God's presence when peril is close by. When you get murmurs of layoffs, trust in his presence. When you feel shaky uncertainty, trust in his presence. When you get that doctor's notice, trust in his presence. When you don't know what's next, trust in his presence. When you don't know how you're going to make it, trust in his presence. When it seems like all hope is gone, trust in his presence. When it seems like you're losing and not winning, trust in his presence, because God does not leave you when peril comes. Not only do you trust that God will meet all your needs, or trust in God's presence when peril is there, but here's the final one and I'm done. Trust in his everlasting grace at all times. You know grace. Grace ain't lost on you. Grace is God's wonderful gift of unmerited favor. It is the love that he pours out on you. He lavishes it on you. But grace, because it is a gift, by very definition, it is never based on you. That God gives you grace even though you are a hot mess. I see some of you got your sanctimonious look on your face. You got your dress clothes on and you don't think you smell. Let me tell you something. God pours grace on you and I, even when we absolutely don't deserve it. It is what you got. You don't lose it. You can't barter for it. You don't pay for it. It is God lavishing it on you. Grace. But grace ain't some one-time thing that you take your one dose and you don't need it anymore. Oh, I know Ephesians 2 tells us we are saved by grace. Absolutely. But grace stays with you. Grace follows you, and with grace comes a multitude of blessing. Can I tell you one of the first things grace does? Grace vindicates you. Listen to what the psalmist says. You prepare a table for me in the presence, not of my friends, but in the presence of my enemies. I wish I could get underneath this verse. The language that the writer is using, he's saying, in the very face of my enemies. Not when my enemies go to sleep, not when they go behind closed doors, not when they leave me, but in their very eyesight. You allow your grace to vindicate me. Here's what the psalmist is saying. My enemies may think they are victorious over me, but God is able to raise me up above my enemies. Why do you spend so much of your time fighting people who don't like you? Somebody said something to you. Somebody looked at you the wrong way. Somebody did something to you. Maybe they really did break your heart. Maybe they really did lie to you. God's grace sits on you and is able to vindicate you. When people start looking at you left, look at them right and say, it is Christ that I stand in, and I am a child of God, and He raises me up. Forget what they think about you. Let what they think about you, let them take it to the bank and deposit it. Let them put it there and let it build and accrue interest. In fact, give them more things to say about you. Because the more they say about you, the more God has to pour out in front of them. Have you ever seen a time when your enemies, your people who didn't even like you, had to sit back and eat crow as God poured out blessing on top of you? Oh, you've seen it. You've seen people try to play you on your job, and here it was your boss skipped over them and gave you the promotion that you didn't think you could. That's called favor. God is able to, right before the people who don't even like you, make you shine. Stop feeling the need like you got to take it into your own hands. Stop feeling like you got to come back with every word, matching it word for word, fist for fist, tooth to tooth. God is able to lift you above what they say, because grace vindicates you. Can I tell you something else grace does? He makes it clear. Grace refreshes and overflows on us. Let me give my disclaimer, Baptist people. I'm about to make you feel uncomfortable here. The psalmist says, He anoints my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. See, in those days, when you traveled in the sun did something that you're quite familiar with. It made your skin ashy. And when somebody invited you to their house, they would take oil and put it on your body. The point of it was not for you to smell good, but it was to cover up the cracks that the sun put on your body. But even deeper than that, it was intended to make you shine, because oil here symbolizes joy. Just when you think you got it, He comes and He makes you Baptist people mad at Him. He says, my cup overflows. You know He ain't talking about water. Can I tell you what He means? My wine overflows. Preacher, you done stepped into heathenism now. See, because it was custom in the ancient Near East that when you invited someone to your house, not only did you give them oil, but you gave them wine. Because wine was intended to refresh the body after a long journey. And so he says, it wasn't just enough wine to fill up half my cup, but my cup was running over as He poured it in. Can I tell you what it means? Wine, whenever it's used in the Bible, don't analyze it too hard, but it oftentimes symbolizes joy. He says He pours this thing in and it overflows. Can I tell you what it means to you? That's what grace does for you. God takes grace and He pours it onto you, and it overflows and refreshes walking around here unhappy with your face turned up, snapping on any and everybody, when God is able to pour into your cup and to let your cup overflow with joy. And let me tell you this, joy is different from happiness, because happiness is based on what's happening. As long as you can pay your bills, you good. As long as you got a little bit of money in your pocket, you fine. As long as people ain't fronting on you, it's all good. But joy is a different proposition, because just like it pours from God and you're trusting in what He says, it helps you say, you'll never leave me, nor will you ever forsake me. Even when it seems like I'm coming to my last breath, you are with me until you call me home. Even when it seems like the days are getting dark and I can't pay my bills, Jesus, you are with me, because your word says that you are with me. When I'm leaning on you, Jesus, I'm tasting and seeing how sweet your presence is. I'm basking in your amazing grace. No matter where I go, I know where I stand in relationship to you because of your grace. Are you struggling this morning? Are you tired this morning? Are you lost this morning? God don't just love you, He cares. There is no need you have that God does not care to meet. There is no pain that you go through that God cannot care to comfort you in. There is no struggle you face that God don't care enough to be with you in. And see, some of us, we struggle with this notion because you had people who said they love you and they proved to be unfaithful. That when the going got tough, they got going with the toughness. But God is a God who says, I stick with you even through the toughness. Here's proof that Jesus hung on that cross in that toughness and went in the grave because of your toughness and got up victoriously because He's tough. God sits with you even in your confusion and your pain. God cares for you. God cares for you. He knows what you face, and He knows what you're going through, and He knows what you will see, and He still cares for you. He knows where you were and how you've been. He knows who you were there with, and He still cares for you. He knows every promise you've made, and you still broken, and He cares for you. God is a meticulous God who cares about the details of your life. Will you trust Him? Will you say, Lord, I'll trust you. Even when I can't understand it, I'll trust you. Even when it seems unfair, I'll trust you. Even when it seems uncertain, I'll trust you. Even when I don't know when it's going to change, I'll trust you. Even when it gets darker, I'll trust you. God's meticulous care demands our faith. Will you trust Him this morning? Let's all stand to our feet.
Thank you.
We praise your name. We give you glory that is beyond you.